The galaxy had always been a place of wonders. Many different species roamed the stars, each with their own strengths, technologies, and cultures. Some had advanced beyond the imagination of others, with powers and knowledge that seemed infinite. Yet, no matter how advanced, no one had ever seen a threat like this. The Oricians, a powerful alien race, were among the oldest and most technologically advanced species in the galaxy. Their ships could travel faster than the speed of light. Their cities stretched across entire planets, and their knowledge of the universe was vast. They were the leaders of an alliance that included many other alien species, each contributing its own strengths to the collective. But even the Oricians were not prepared for the disaster that suddenly struck their galaxy. It began as a faint, mysterious ripple, a distortion in space that no one could explain. It was small at first, hardly noticeable. But as time passed, the ripples grew larger. They spread out across entire star systems, causing strange phenomena. Stars would blink out of existence. Planets would flicker, disappearing for moments before reappearing somewhere else in the universe. Whole fleets of ships vanished without a trace. The Oricians quickly realized that this was not a natural phenomenon. It was something more dangerous, something they had never encountered before. Panic began to spread throughout the galaxy as the mysterious rift expanded. No one knew what caused it or how to stop it. The Oricians had their best scientists working around the clock, but the more they studied the anomaly, the less they understood. Nothing seemed to work. Their powerful technology, which had once solved every problem they had faced, was useless against this new threat. In desperation, the Orician High Council gathered for a meeting. The room was silent as the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful species sat around a large table. They had tried everything they could, but the anomaly was growing faster than they could contain it. It was clear that something had to be done, but they were running out of time. One of the council members, a senior Orician diplomat named Solterra, stood up. Her silver skin shimmered in the soft light of the council chamber as she spoke. "We have no choice," she said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "If we do not act now, the galaxy will be lost." The others turned to her, their expressions a mix of disbelief and fear. Solterra's words were not an exaggeration. The anomaly was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was destroying entire star systems, causing untold damage. The fate of their civilization, of all civilizations, was hanging in the balance. "I know what you are thinking," Solterra continued, "but we cannot fight this alone. We must ask for help." The council fell silent once again. Asking for help was not something the Oricians ever did. They were proud, powerful, and self-sufficient. For centuries, they had been the ones who offered aid to weaker species, not the other way around. But the situation was dire. Their pride could no longer stand in the way of survival. Finally, one of the other council members, a warrior named Salagor, spoke. "Who could we possibly turn to for help?" he asked. "We are the strongest species in the galaxy. What other race could offer anything that we don't already have?" Solterra's eyes softened as she looked at Salagor. "There is one species we have not considered," she said. "Humans." The room fell silent. The word humans had a strange effect on the council members. Some of them chuckled nervously, unsure if she was joking. The humans, after all, were a young species, just beginning to explore the stars. They were not known for their advanced technology or vast knowledge. They had only recently discovered the ability to travel between planets, and their starships were far less sophisticated than those of the Oricians. But Solterra was serious. She continued, "They are small, yes, but their ability to adapt, to think outside the box, is unlike anything we've ever seen. Perhaps their creativity and ingenuity can offer us the solution we need." Xalgor frowned. "You want us to ask for help from them?" he said with disbelief. Solterra nodded. "We have no other choice. We have tried everything else. If anyone can think of a way to stop this anomaly, it is humanity." The council members exchanged uncertain glances. They had always viewed humans as insignificant, a species still in its infancy when it came to space travel. But Solterra's logic was undeniable. In a crisis of this magnitude, even the most unlikely ally could prove invaluable. And so, reluctantly, the decision was made. The Aritians would send out a call for help, not to their fellow advanced species, but to humanity. A call that, if answered, could save not just the Aritians, but the entire galaxy. The galaxy was about to find out just how much humanity was capable of. The call for help had been sent. The Aritian fleet, with all its power and might, had sent a message across the stars, directed at humanity. It was a desperate plea, one that many across the galaxy found strange. Why would a powerful species like the Aritians ask for help from a species so young, so seemingly unprepared? On Earth, the message arrived without warning. The world's governments, military leaders, and scientists were stunned. The entire globe watched as the message was broadcasted on every screen, from the largest televisions to the smallest devices. The words were simple: "We need your help. The galaxy is in danger. Our civilization is at risk. Only you can save us." At first, many believed it was some kind of mistake or trick. Humans had been approached before by various alien species, but nothing like this. No one had ever imagined that the Aritians would reach out to them. The idea seemed impossible. The Aritians had always been seen as the leaders, the ones who made decisions for the galaxy. They were the ones who solved problems, not the ones asking for help. The response from Earth was a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and curiosity. Many saw the message as a challenge. How could humans, with their limited space travel technology, possibly be the solution to the galaxy's problems? Others were more skeptical. There was no way this could be real, they thought. It was just some elaborate hoax or an alien trick. Why would the Aritians, a species that had seen and done so much, need help from humanity? But for a few, the message sparked something deeper, a sense of duty, an unexplainable urge to act. Among them was President Emma Collins, a leader known for her clear vision and strong resolve. She had witnessed humanity's growth firsthand. From a planet torn by wars to a species now exploring the stars, she knew that humanity had always faced its challenges head-on, whether it was through resilience, creativity, or the ability to unite in the face of adversity. This might be their moment. "We can't ignore this," she said, standing before a room full of advisors and scientists. "We've been given a chance to prove who we are, not just to the Aritians, but to the whole galaxy." Her words struck a chord with those in the room. Even though many were still unsure about the message's authenticity, they couldn't deny that something had to be done. If the galaxy was really at risk, if the Aritians had sent a distress signal, then humanity's response would be critical. The debate that followed was long and heated. Some argued that they should immediately send a fleet to aid the Aritians. After all, the Aritians had advanced technology and knowledge far beyond anything humans had ever seen. Others, however, were hesitant. Sending help meant trusting the Aritians, which was a leap of faith many were unwilling to take. Some even feared the Aritians might be trying to manipulate humanity for their own purposes. But as the discussions continued, something became clear to President Collins and her team. The world was watching. And not just Earth. The galaxy was watching. If humanity didn't act, they would forever be known as the species that stood by while the galaxy burned. This was not just about helping the Aritians, it was about humanity's place in the universe. After several days of intense discussions, a decision was finally made. The Earth would send a team of their best scientists, engineers, and military strategists to the Aritians. It wasn't a large force. They didn't have the resources to compete with the Aritians' might, but it was a start. The team would go to the Aritian homeworld to assess the situation and, if possible, offer a solution. They were not going to let the galaxy fall into chaos, not when they had the chance to do something about it. The team, led by Dr. Liam Rivers, a renowned physicist, was tasked with figuring out the anomaly that had destroyed so much. They were given all the resources humanity could spare, advanced technology, starships, and the brightest minds, but they were still dwarfed by the might of the Arishans. As the human ships prepared to depart, there was a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. Many wondered what awaited them on the other side of the stars. Would the Arishans accept their help? Would humanity truly be able to offer a solution to the galaxy's greatest crisis? Dr. Rivers, who had been selected to lead the team, couldn't help but feel the weight of the responsibility. This wasn't just a mission to assist another species. This was humanity's chance to prove that, no matter how small they seemed in the grand scheme of the universe, they could stand alongside the greatest civilizations. They could be heroes too. "I don't know what we'll find when we arrive," he said to his team as they gathered on the deck of their ship. "But whatever happens, we do this together. We show them that humanity is not to be underestimated. We will find a way." With that, the human team set off, leaving Earth behind. As their ships cut through the stars, they couldn't help but wonder, would the galaxy remember them as the species that saved the day, or the ones who failed when it mattered most? The answer to that question was yet to be written. After a long and uncertain journey through the vastness of space, the human fleet finally arrived at the Arishan homeworld. It was a breathtaking sight, an enormous planet surrounded by beautiful, shimmering rings. From their ships, the humans could see the advanced technology of the Arishan cities, with massive structures that seemed to reach the sky, all illuminated by soft, glowing lights. It was clear that this was a species with the power to shape entire worlds. But as they approached the planet, something felt different. There was an unease in the air, a tension that could be felt even in the silence of the human ships. The Arishans, while peaceful and diplomatic, were known for their pride and precision. And now, they were in the middle of a crisis so dire that they had turned to humanity for help. The human fleet docked at a designated spaceport near one of the Arishan cities. As the landing bay doors opened, the humans were greeted by a delegation of Arishan leaders. Solterra, the diplomat who had sent the message to Earth, stood at the forefront. Her silver skin shimmered in the sunlight, her large, expressive eyes filled with both worry and hope. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Welcome, humans," she said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "We are grateful for your arrival. We need your help more than ever." Dr. Liam Rivers, who had been chosen to lead the human team, stepped forward. He extended his hand, offering a gesture of peace. "We're here to do whatever we can," he said. "We may not have the technology you do, but we'll work together to solve this." Solterra nodded but couldn't hide the hint of skepticism in her eyes. It was clear that while the Arishans appreciated the humans' willingness to help, they didn't fully believe in their ability to make a difference. They had tried everything their advanced technology could offer, but the anomaly remained beyond their reach. Still, they knew they had no other choice. "Follow me," Solterra said, turning to lead the humans through the city. As they walked, the humans couldn't help but notice the signs of the ongoing crisis. The sky, once a brilliant blue, had become clouded with strange energy pulses. Buildings that should have been bustling with activity were eerily quiet, with only a few people wandering the streets. The atmosphere felt heavy, as though the very fabric of the world was being pulled apart. Finally, they reached the Arishan Research Facility, a place where the best minds had gathered to study the anomaly. Inside, large screens displayed data that flashed with patterns the humans couldn't fully understand. But one thing was clear: the anomaly was not just a disturbance in space, it was a rift in time itself. Dr. Rivers and his team immediately began to study the data. They were joined by Arishan scientists who had been working non-stop to find a solution. Together, the two species shared their knowledge and insights, trying to make sense of what had been happening. But despite their combined efforts, the mystery of the anomaly only deepened. "Every time we think we have a solution, the anomaly shifts," said Taryn, one of the lead Arishan scientists. "It's as if it's alive, constantly changing and adapting. Nothing we've tried has worked." Dr. Rivers frowned. This wasn't like anything humanity had encountered before. The anomaly didn't behave like a typical cosmic event. It didn't follow any predictable pattern. The more they studied it, the more it seemed as though it were aware. This is beyond anything we could have prepared for, Dr. Rivers admitted. But we have something that might help, something the Irishans don't have. Sol Terra raised an eyebrow. And what is that? Humans have always been good at thinking outside the box, Dr. Rivers said. When faced with the unknown, we don't always follow the usual rules. We adapt in ways other species might not think of. The Irishans exchanged uncertain glances. They had always relied on logic and structure, the calculated use of technology. It was difficult for them to understand the human approach, which often involved creativity, risk, and intuition. But it was clear that the anomaly was unlike anything they had ever encountered, and perhaps they needed to approach it from a different angle. Let's try your way then, Sol Terra said, her voice filled with both hope and doubt. But know this, we have limited time. If we don't act soon, more systems will be destroyed. With that, Dr. Rivers and his team began to brainstorm new ideas. They started with the theory that the anomaly wasn't just a rift in space, but a break in the timeline itself. It was unstable, a crack in the very fabric of the universe. But if it was a crack, perhaps it could be sealed. While the Irishans worked on their traditional methods of analysis and containment, the humans looked at the problem from a different angle. They proposed using a form of resonance, a technology that had been developed on Earth, but never tested on such a grand scale. It was a gamble. There were no guarantees it would work. But with the galaxy at stake, they had little choice. The human team worked tirelessly alongside the Irishans, blending their creativity and technology with the Irishan methods. As they went deeper into the data, it became clear that the solution would not be simple. It would take every ounce of their combined effort to even begin to understand the anomaly. And they would need to act quickly, before the rift destroyed everything in its path. The fate of the galaxy was now in their hands, and no one could predict what would happen next. But one thing was certain: humanity was determined to do everything it could to help, even if it meant facing the unknown in ways no one had ever dared before. Days passed since the humans and Irishans had started their joint effort to stop the growing anomaly. The research facility was alive with activity, the air thick with the sound of conversations, calculations, and the soft hum of advanced technology. Irishan and human scientists worked side by side, attempting to crack the mystery of the rift in time. Yet, despite their efforts, the anomaly only grew larger and more unpredictable. The humans had introduced their own method of thinking, their outside-the-box approaches. They talked about resonance fields, energy harmonics, and even theories about quantum probabilities. Some of their ideas had been accepted with skepticism, while others were met with outright resistance. But Dr. Liam Rivers and his team continued, determined not to let the galaxy fall into chaos. Dr. Rivers had spent long hours studying the data. As he sat in front of a large screen filled with swirling numbers and energy patterns, a thought struck him. It was something small, something seemingly insignificant, but to him, it felt like the key. He rushed over to his team. "I've been looking at the anomaly again," he said. "There's something we missed. What if it's not just a rift in space-time? What if it's a disruption in information itself?" His team looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean, Dr. Rivers?" asked Maria, one of his lead scientists. "A disruption in information." Dr. Rivers nodded. "We've been assuming the anomaly is a physical event, something we can contain with energy or technology. But what if the rift is actually a breakdown in the flow of information, the way data, energy, or even time itself communicates across the universe? What if it's causing everything to fall apart by scrambling that flow?" Maria thought for a moment. "So, you're saying that the anomaly isn't just tearing things apart, it's disrupting the way the universe reads reality." "Exactly," Dr. Rivers said. "And that means we might be able to fix it by sending the right kind of information back into the rift. Something that could restore balance." The room fell silent. It was a radical idea. The Arishans had always relied on physical solutions, weapons, shields, containment fields. But this was something different, something new. Yet it seemed to make sense, in a way that no one had considered before. Sol Terra, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Are you saying we can communicate with the rift itself? That we can send information back into it?" Dr. Rivers nodded. "Yes, if the rift is a breakdown in the communication of universal laws, time, space, energy, then maybe we can restore it by using a communication system that exists beyond our technology. We have to think of this as a problem of understanding, not just containment." Sol Terra looked thoughtful. "You may be onto something, but the Arishans have never approached such a problem this way. We rely on physical laws, not abstract concepts." "I know," Dr. Rivers said, "but that's where humanity's strengths come in. We've had to adapt in ways no one else has. We've built our civilization on solving problems no one thought we could solve. We think differently." The Arishan leaders exchanged glances. They had never considered that a species as young as humanity could offer a solution to something so complex. But there was something in Dr. Rivers' conviction that gave them hope. Perhaps it was time to embrace a new approach. "We'll support you," Sol Terra said, her voice firm. "We'll give you everything you need." And so, the humans and Arishans began to work together in ways they never had before. They gathered the most advanced minds from both species, pooling their knowledge of quantum physics, energy manipulation, and even ancient theories of universal harmony. As they worked, they began to understand the anomaly in ways that no one had imagined. The solution, though still in its early stages, was beginning to take shape. Dr. Rivers and his team had designed a device that would send a signal into the rift, an encoded message, one that would attempt to or communicate the universal laws to the rift. It wasn't a guarantee. The rift was still unstable, and there were so many unknowns, but it was their best hope. As the device was constructed, Sol Terra looked on with a mixture of awe and anxiety. The Arishans had always believed in control, in mastering every situation with technology and precision. But now they were relying on something far more uncertain: the creativity and resourcefulness of a species they had once viewed as insignificant. On the eve of the test, Dr. Rivers gathered his team. They were about to take a step into the unknown, one that could change everything. If their plan succeeded, they might be able to stabilize the rift. But if it failed, there was no telling what would happen. "This is it," Dr. Rivers said, standing before his team. "We don't know if this will work, but we've come this far together. We're not going to stop now. Whatever happens, we do it together. We trust in each other." The team nodded. They had no idea what the outcome would be, but they knew they had done everything they could. As the humans prepared to activate the device, a strange sense of anticipation filled the air. The future of the galaxy was in their hands, and they were ready to face whatever came next. The room was quiet as the final preparations were made. The device, a sleek and intricate piece of technology, hummed softly. It stood at the center of the Arishan research facility, surrounded by both human and Arishan scientists. Everyone in the room understood the gravity of what was about to happen. They had worked tirelessly for days, weeks even, building the device that could send a message into the heart of the rift. Dr. Liam Rivers stood near the device, reviewing the final checks. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. He had come a long way from Earth, a young scientist who had never imagined he would be facing something like this. But now he had a chance to prove that humanity could make a difference, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. The anomaly, a crack in the fabric of space and time, was still growing. It pulsed with strange energy, threatening to unravel the universe as they knew it. The idea of sending a message back into the rift, one that could restore balance, was their only hope. If it worked, the galaxy would be saved. If it failed, no one knew what would happen. The Erishan leaders, including Solterra, stood quietly at the back of the room, watching with a mix of uncertainty and hope. The Erishans had always been the ones who solved problems. Their technology was advanced, their understanding of the universe vast. Yet here they were, looking to humanity for a solution to the crisis that had them stumped. "Are you ready?" Solterra asked softly, her voice filled with both concern and anticipation. Dr. Rivers nodded, as ready as we'll ever be. The moment had come. The room was filled with a quiet, tense energy as everyone turned their attention to the device. On the screen in front of them, the data streams were steady. The rift in spacetime was growing more unstable with each passing second, but the device was ready to make its move. Dr. Rivers took a deep breath. "Activate the signal." The command was given, and with a soft hum, the device began to glow. A wave of energy pulsed out from it, traveling through the facility and into the vast expanse of space. The rift was massive, and no one knew if the device's message would even reach its heart. But they had to try. The tension in the room was palpable as everyone watched the screens. The energy wave shot toward the anomaly, rippling through the vast emptiness. For a few moments, nothing happened. The rift remained as chaotic and unpredictable as before. But then, something changed. The pulsing of the rift slowed, ever so slightly. Dr. Rivers leaned forward, staring at the screens. "It's working," he whispered. The wave of energy sent by the device seemed to be having an effect. The rift was still there, still unstable, but it was no longer growing. The strange patterns on the screens began to shift, slowly stabilizing. The message, the information sent by the humans, was reaching the heart of the rift. It wasn't a physical force, it was a call for understanding, a plea to restore balance to the universe. The room erupted into a soft murmur of excitement. "It's working. It's actually working." Maria, one of Dr. Rivers' team members, exclaimed. But Solterra remained quiet, watching with intense focus. The Erishans had always believed in logic and structure, but this was something different. The humans had taken a leap of faith, using an approach that was beyond the typical methods of advanced civilizations, and it seemed to be paying off. For the first time since the anomaly had appeared, there was hope. The rift wasn't expanding. It wasn't collapsing everything in its path. It was stabilizing, but it was still too early to know if the solution would hold. "We need to keep monitoring it," Dr. Rivers said, his voice steady, but filled with a sense of cautious optimism. "We've made progress, but we don't know how long this will last." Solterra stepped forward, her silver eyes filled with a new sense of respect. "This is more than we expected. You have saved us from certain destruction. If this works, if the rift can be sealed, it will be because of your courage and your willingness to think differently." Dr. Rivers nodded. "It's not just us. It's all of us, humans and Erishans working together. That's what made the difference." The room fell silent again as everyone continued to watch the screens. The pulse of the rift was slowing, the energy waves becoming less erratic. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Outside, the sky above the Erishan city had begun to clear. The strange, dark clouds that had loomed overhead for so long were starting to dissipate. The energy pulses that had once threatened to destroy everything were now diminishing. It was as though the universe itself was taking a breath, relieved that the threat had been contained, at least for now. But the battle wasn't over. Dr. Rivers knew that this was only the beginning. The anomaly might be stabilizing, but they would need to keep working, keep studying, and keep finding ways to ensure it didn't return. There was still so much to understand about the rift, and humanity, and the Erishans would have to continue their partnership if they wanted to prevent future catastrophes. "This is just the start," Dr. Rivers said, looking around the room. "We've found a way to hold it back. Now we need to figure out how to fix it for good." The team nodded in agreement. Together, they had taken the first step. And together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the days passed, The atmosphere at the research facility became more hopeful, but also more intense. The anomaly, which had once threatened to tear the galaxy apart, was now stabilized, thanks to the combined efforts of the humans and Oricians. The rift, while still present, had stopped growing. The energy pulses that had once been chaotic and destructive had diminished. But the threat wasn't gone entirely. Everyone knew that the stability was temporary, a fragile balance that needed to be maintained. Dr. Liam Rivers and his team continued their work alongside the Oricians. The initial success of the device they had built gave everyone renewed energy, but it also raised new questions. What had caused the rift in the first place? Why had it appeared so suddenly and with such destructive force? And most importantly, how could they ensure it never came back? In the weeks following their breakthrough, the humans and Oricians had worked together to gather more data, study the anomaly's behavior, and refine their technology. The collaboration was more than just practical. It was a symbol of what humanity and the Oricians had accomplished together. Two species, once so different, now united by a common goal. One afternoon, as Dr. Rivers was reviewing the latest readings from the device, Maria approached him with a look of concern. "Dr. Rivers, there's something strange in the data," she said, pointing to the screen. "Look at this pattern. It's changing again." Dr. Rivers frowned and leaned over the screen. Sure enough, the once stable rift was beginning to pulse again, though this time, the energy seemed more concentrated, almost deliberate. It wasn't the erratic chaos they had seen before, but it was still a sign that the rift wasn't fully under control. "This isn't good," Dr. Rivers muttered. "It's adapting. The rift's not just a passive force anymore. It's evolving. We need to figure out why." Sol Terra, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward. "What do you mean, evolving? The rift is growing again." "Not in the way it did before," Dr. Rivers said. "It's responding to us. It's as if the rift is learning from what we've done, trying to find a way around our solution. We need to act fast before it becomes too much for us to handle." The team quickly gathered in the war room, a large conference area where both humans and Oricians had been meeting to analyze the situation. They sat around a table, with screens projecting data in front of them. Sol Terra and the other Orician leaders were silent, their faces grave. Dr. Rivers stood at the front, looking at the data with determination. "We've reached a critical point. The rift isn't just a random anomaly anymore. It's intelligent, in some way. It's learning from us, from our attempts to stabilize it. That means we can't approach it the same way we have been." Terran, the lead Orician scientist, spoke up. "So what do you suggest, human? We can't keep reacting to its changes. We need to find a way to prevent it from adapting." Dr. Rivers paused, taking in the gravity of the situation. He had always trusted in humanity's ability to think outside the box, but this was unlike anything they had faced before. An intelligent, evolving anomaly, something that didn't follow the normal laws of physics. It was a challenge that required every bit of their combined ingenuity. "We need to find a way to outsmart it," Dr. Rivers said. "Instead of just sending signals or energy into the rift, we need to send something more powerful, something the rift can't predict." Maria, who had been studying the data with a focused intensity, suddenly had an idea. "What if the rift is responding to patterns? We've been using logic, energy, and frequencies, but maybe we need to send something more complex. Something that the rift can't recognize, something random." Dr. Rivers' eyes widened. "You're saying we need to confuse it, throw it off balance?" "Exactly," Maria said. "The rift seems to be adapting to our methods, but if we send it something unexpected, something it can't interpret, maybe we can disrupt its learning process." The room went quiet as everyone considered this new approach. It was a risky idea. The rift had already proven it could outpace their attempts to control it. But if the rift was adapting, then it might also be vulnerable to unpredictability. It wasn't a solution anyone had considered before, but it made sense in a strange way. Sol Terra stood up, her face thoughtful. "This is unorthodox. But it may be our only option. The Oricians are not accustomed to using randomness in our technology. We prefer to control every aspect. But perhaps, in this case, control is not the answer. Dr. Rivers nodded. That's right. We can't outsmart it if we keep thinking within its limits. We need to think outside of its understanding. The team worked quickly to develop a new plan. They began designing a new device that would send a burst of chaotic energy, something that the rift wouldn't be able to predict or adapt to. It was a gamble, but it was their best hope of disrupting the anomaly long enough to find a permanent solution. As they prepared for the new test, the sense of urgency grew. The rift was still pulsing, still threatening to tear everything apart. But for the first time in a long while, the humans and Oricians felt a spark of hope. They had learned something vital. The rift wasn't invincible. It could be challenged. They didn't know if this would work, but they were willing to try. Together, humans and Oricians had already defied the odds once. Now, they would try to do it again. The moment had arrived. The room was charged with anticipation, as both humans and Oricians prepared for the most crucial test yet. The device was ready, and the plan was set in motion. They had crafted a method that was unlike anything they had done before. It was unpredictable, chaotic, and a gamble, but it was their best chance to stop the rift once and for all. Dr. Liam Rivers stood at the front of the room, surrounded by his team. He had seen many challenges in his life, but none had ever felt as monumental as this one. The rift that threatened the very fabric of space and time had pushed them to their limits. It had forced them to think beyond their capabilities and to rely on each other in ways they had never imagined. "Are you ready?" Dr. Rivers asked, his voice steady, though the weight of the moment hung in the air. Maria, one of his lead scientists, nodded, her face determined. "Ready as we'll ever be. We've worked out the final adjustments to the device. If this works, the rift will no longer have the ability to adapt to our efforts. It will be neutralized." Solterra, the Orician leader, stood nearby, her silver eyes focused on the screens. "We have no choice but to trust in your plan, human," she said, her voice calm but serious. "The future of our galaxy depends on this." The device was at the center of the room, glowing softly with energy. This new version was designed to send a burst of chaotic, random energy into the rift, something that could disrupt its growing intelligence and prevent it from adapting further. The idea was to overload the rift with unpredictability, giving it no time to respond. It was a risky maneuver, but the team was united in their belief that it was their only option. The countdown began, echoing through the room as everyone stood silently, waiting. Dr. Rivers glanced at the clock on the wall. 15 seconds. Every second felt like an eternity. "Activate the device," Dr. Rivers ordered, his voice firm. With a soft hum, the device came to life. A wave of energy surged forward, rushing into the rift at the speed of light. The rift, which had been pulsing erratically for days, suddenly seemed to tremble. The chaotic energy hit the rift like a storm, throwing everything off balance. The screen showed a sudden spike in activity, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the rift was going to resist, pushing back against the wave of energy. Dr. Rivers' heart pounded in his chest as he watched the data. The tension in the room was unbearable. They had no idea if their plan would succeed. If it didn't, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yet, they had no other choice. Then, slowly, something changed. The rift's pulses began to slow, its energy wavering. It was as if the rift had been stunned, its ability to adapt thrown off course. The screens flickered, showing signs of stabilization. "We did it!" Maria exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief and relief. "It's working. The rift is stabilizing." Solterra stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. This is beyond anything we expected. The rift is no longer expanding. It's shrinking." Dr. Rivers let out a long breath, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. The room erupted into quiet cheers, but they knew they couldn't let their guard down yet. The rift was still there, still dangerous, but it was no longer an immediate threat. The unpredictable energy burst had worked. The rift's intelligence had been disrupted, its growth halted. "We have a chance," Dr. Rivers said, his voice hoarse but filled with hope. "Now we need to hold it steady long enough to find a permanent solution." For the next few hours, the team worked non-stop, monitoring the rift's progress. The chaotic burst had bought them precious time, but they knew they had to act quickly. They continued to analyze the data, looking for ways to reinforce the stability and find a way to close the rift completely. The collaboration between humans and Oricians was stronger than ever. They shared their knowledge, their technology, their skills, working side by side in a way that felt natural now. They had built something together that neither species could have done alone. And then, as the sun began to set over the distant horizon of the Orician homeworld, something extraordinary happened. The rift, which had once stretched across the sky like a tear in the universe, began to shrink further. The pulses of energy grew quieter, and the patterns on the screens showed that the anomaly was finally fading. It wasn't gone yet, but it was no longer the apocalyptic threat it had once been. The rift was closing, its power fading. It would take time, but the worst of it was over. "We've done it," Solterra said softly, her voice filled with awe and relief. "The galaxy is safe." Dr. Rivers looked around at his team, at the Oricians who had once doubted humanity, and now saw them as partners in something much larger than themselves. It wasn't just the solution to the rift that mattered. It was the bond they had formed in the process. For the first time, humanity had proven that they were more than just survivors. They were heroes. They had saved the galaxy, not with weapons or brute force, but with creativity, cooperation, and courage. They had delivered beyond anyone's imagination. As the rift continued to close, the galaxy seemed to take a collective breath. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope. And that hope, Dr. Rivers knew, was only the beginning.